I'm Winnie Looby. I'm with the Center on Disability and Community Inclusion. And today I'm going to be interviewing Ted Looby, who's also my partner. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us about your relationship with disability?
Sure. My name is Ted Looby. My relationship with disability probably started when we had kids, actually, and before that, with Winnie and her health challenges. And then we had kids, and we discovered they were on the autism spectrum. So we had to navigate the school system with them and the healthcare system with Winnie. And then with my own disabilities that popped up. Well, I've had cancer twice. I had head and neck cancer. I had a part of my tongue removed. And then about 6 months later, I was diagnosed with central nervous system lymphoma, which is a fancy name for a brain tumor. So, and while I was undergoing treatment, I lost most of my vision. And so I had to adjust to that, not being able to do a lot of things I could do before, but it also opened up, other things to do, like listening to audiobooks and navigating with my white cane. And I sometimes use a wheelchair because I had a really bad spinal infection at the end of last year. And that kind of zapped most of my energy. So here I am.
Yeah, so that actually ties to, let me think. There's a question about if you identify as a person with a disability.
I do, yes. Yeah, probably so.
Yeah, so what would you say if somebody asked you your category of disability, what do you tell them?
Well, I identify as blind. And I guess physically disabled too, like with my legs. Mobility, yes, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay.
So those two things, yeah.
So do you regularly use any kinds of assistive technology? If we're talking about, I guess a wheelchair is assistive, right?
Yeah.
White cane. What other kinds of stuff do you use?
I have an iPhone, which is really helpful.
Oh, right.
Because there's lots of accessible features on there.
Right.
I like seeing AI, which can, read instructions on how to cook something.
Oh, like an app on your phone?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you mentioned audiobooks.
Oh, yeah. I have this app called Bard, which is through the state of Vermont libraries. And so I can download books for free using Able Library. And so I've read so many books on there. I think those are the big things.
Okay. So for now, we're going to shift a little bit. I want to talk about audio described multimedia. So do you regularly consume audio described multimedia?
Like television or movies?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some are great, like The Residents, that TV show with Uzo Aduba.
Oh, we've been on Orange is the New Black.
Yeah. That had a great audio descriptive feature.
Yeah, that was good.
And, it was helped me understand what was going on with the show plot. And some are not so good.
Mm,
just really dry narrators.
mm.
Um,
Sound like computer voices
yeah, it
sometimes.
sounds like computer generated voice. Yeah. So that's the difficulty.
Yeah.
And was it Hulu who has audio descriptive or Netflix?
Um, it just depends on what
Yeah.
the piece of media is. I don't know why it's not
Yeah.
consistent. So some specific
Mhm.
shows or movies will have it available,
Yeah.
and others won't. Kind of like when you watch YouTube, and sometimes things are captioned really well, sometimes they're not captioned at all.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah, similar.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you can't really depend on it to be
No,
consistent.
that's true.
So we're talking about when it worked really well was
Mhm.
what for this one particular show we watched,
Yeah.
right? So how do you find good audio described media?
Um, I think you have to know like who the narrators are.
Mm,
I had my favorite narrators on um, audiobooks.
okay.
And so that helps a lot. I read or listened to this Zora Neale Hurston book,
Mm,
and Ruby Dee narrated it, and it was like she set the bar so high. It was
nice.
hard to go back to other narrators.
Yeah.
Um, but there's definitely people that I check and just see it, what else they narrated, so I can listen to those books.
Nice. So like you look for a particular person that's going to read it to pick a book.
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
I
That's a
know.
good idea. That's a really good idea. Um, well, can you talk a little bit more about like when it doesn't work as well as you'd like it to work?
Yeah. Um, it's not engaging.
Mm,
It's hard to engage
mhm,
with the story if someone sounds like a robot or it
mm,
is a robot or
mhm,
AI.
mhm,
Um, that's really hard. I have a hard time getting through a book
mhm.
when it's like that.
Have you like just stop the book and switch to something else if
Oh
it's
yeah,
bad?
definitely. Yeah.
Because it takes like how many hours would you say it takes to get through a book?
It depends on the book. Some are like 25 hours long
Wow.
of listening, and others are like 5 or 10 hours.
Yeah.
Um, and the books that are engaging, it doesn't, like they could be like 20 or 30 hours and it just flies by.
Nice.
And I look forward to like listening to it.
Nice.
Um, I think, yeah, Robin Miles is another narrator that I really like,
Mm,
and um, Dominic Hoffman
mm,
is another one.
mm.
So those two are great for me to listen to.
Cool. Um, so what would you say is the most satisfying thing about using audio described media? You're saying like particular narrators,
Mhm.
and like is it kind of like the dynamics of their voice, like their interpretation of what's happening?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, like with Ruby Dee, it was like listening to her perform like a stage show.
Oh, nice.
You know,
Yeah.
she would do all the voices
Mhm,
and the descriptive of what was happening.
mhm, mhm.
So that was really helpful.
Yeah.
Um, I get a little irritated when someone tries to do an accent that they can't do.
Oh, no, that's bad.
I know. Someone who was an American tried to do a Scottish accent
Oh,
and it just turned out horrible. And I
no.
had to put the book down. That didn't work. But I think, yeah, the performance is huge. The story is engaging. Um, Trying to think what else.
So it's kind of like if it seems like the way you describe it, it's like a whole nother art form, really,
Oh yeah, definitely,
right?
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, there's the story that you would read on paper, but then another way to experience it.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
kind of even richer, really.
Yeah, so I can
Yeah.
imagine in my head what people
Mhm.
look like and what the place they live looks like.
Mm,
Um,
nice.
so that's also beneficial for me to use my imagination.
Mm, that's cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. So what's one thing you wish more people knew about audio description?
That it's an actual book,
Mhm.
I've heard some people say it doesn't count.
Mhm.
That's kind of, gets in my craw. Yeah, because it does count.
Right.
It's an accessibility feature that allows people who can't see
Mhm.
to enjoy books and
Mhm.
magazines and any print media.
Mhm.
Um, so I wish they would understand more about that.
I think it applies to, it's beneficial for lots of people though too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like one of our kids really didn't like reading, kind of had some
Mhm.
trouble with it, so they didn't want to read.
Yeah.
And then we found them really good audiobooks, and
Yep.
then that really got them going.
Hey, that's
They
right.
could engage in a different way.
That's true. Yeah, or people
Yeah.
with dyslexia,
Mm-hmm.
I think would be a great tool for them to listen to audiobooks.
Mm.
Um, and as far as processing goes, I'm not the fastest processor anymore. So I can, like, if I need to pause the book
Mm.
and kind of take in what I just listened to,
Can do
I
that.
can do that, which is really helpful.
Oh, nice, nice. And then anything else that you wanted to say about just access in general, I guess?
Um, I think like the curb cuts are
Mm-hmm.
huge,
Mm-hmm.
and the automatic doors
Mm-hmm.
are another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, because if you go down to Church Street, most of them are not accessible
Yeah.
because they have like a little step up, and you can't get in with a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, the doorways are kind of narrow.
yeah, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
So if you have a wheelchair, kind of get jammed or your fingers get pinched.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. What?
Yeah, that's all right. Well, thanks for being on the interview.
Are you welcome?
Yeah, it's not a super exciting interview, but I hope it's
No, I had fun.